Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. The first thing that struck me when I got home was the silence. Not the peaceful, familiar kind that came with living by the lake, but something heavier. I stood at the front door for a few seconds, just listening, wondering why the house felt colder than it should have, like it had been left to itself too long. Chloe's car was in the driveway. The lights were on. The house smelled faintly of lavender, the scent of a candle I rarely saw her use. Yet, the rooms felt empty. I set down my duffel bag and wandered through the house, expecting Chloe to pop out from the kitchen or to hear the soft hum of her singing while folding laundry. Instead, I found the living room slightly disheveled. The throw blanket on the couch was tangled, and 2 wine glasses sat on the coffee table. One still had fresh lipstick on the rim. The wine bottle was half drained, cork left casually beside it. Chloe wasn't much of a drinker on her own. My stomach tightened. I called out, "Chloe." No response. I wandered upstairs and found her in the bedroom, standing at the window, staring out over the lake like she hadn't noticed me come in. She jumped slightly when I called her name again, then turned with that familiar smile, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Adam, you're home early," she said, rushing to hug me. "I thought you'd be back tomorrow." "Managed to catch an earlier flight," I said, holding her tightly but feeling how stiff she was. "Figured I'd surprise you." She pulled away quickly, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Well, you did. I was just watching the sunset." Watching the sunset without music, without wine in hand, while the house carried signs of company. I tried to ignore the unease creeping into me. Maybe Vanessa, her sister, had been by. They often shared wine and stories when I was away, sometimes late into the night. Yet something about the way Chloe avoided my eyes made me hesitate. Downstairs, I noticed another detail, a jacket draped over the back of the kitchen chair. It wasn't mine. It wasn't Vanessa's style either. I picked it up, checking the label. A rugged outdoors brand, stained faintly at the cuffs. A fisherman's jacket. My gut sank immediately. Only a handful of people we knew wore this brand religiously, and one name flashed across my mind before I could stop it. Rick, my old fishing buddy. When Chloe came downstairs, I casually lifted the jacket. "This yours?" She froze for half a second, then forced a laugh. "Oh, Rick left it. He stopped by to go over derby stuff." "The derby isn't for another 2 weeks," I said lightly, but carefully. She shrugged. "You know how Rick is. Wanted to make sure everything's set. He's anxious about winning this year." Rick had always been competitive, sure, but I couldn't recall him ever driving out to the cabin just to talk planning without me. Especially not late in the evening, judging by the wine glasses. I didn't press further. Instead, I played along, letting her believe I bought the explanation. I let her lead the conversation into safer waters, dinner, the derby, even joking about Rick's obsession with gear. But the tension sat between us like a third person at the table. Later that night, as Chloe curled into me on the couch, I kept noticing little signs. She didn't meet my eyes like she usually did. She flinched slightly when I kissed her forehead. She held on to me tighter than normal, like trying to reassure herself of something. I played the role of the unsuspecting husband, smiling, nodding, listening. But every word she said sounded rehearsed. When we went to bed, I lay awake long after she drifted off. I stared at the ceiling, hearing the soft lapping of the lake against the dock outside, a sound that usually calmed me. Not tonight. I replayed the image of that jacket, the wine glasses, her startled reaction. None of it sat right. The next morning, Chloe was up early, already making coffee and humming in the kitchen as if nothing had happened. She smiled when she saw me. "Thought I'd make us a proper breakfast," she said, like everything was normal. And maybe for her it was, or maybe she just didn't expect me to look too closely. But I was already looking, and I wasn't going to stop. Over the next few days, I tried to convince myself I was reading too much into it. The wine glasses, the jacket, the tension, they could all be harmless. Chloe had always been affectionate with friends, trusting, and maybe I was just rusty from too much time away. But no matter how hard I tried to smooth it over, the weight in my gut refused to lift. It only got heavier when I found the box. It happened the following Saturday. Chloe had gone into town to pick up supplies for the derby, leaving me to sort out the storage shed and clear out old fishing gear. I wasn't looking for anything, really, just organizing. But behind a stack of old tackle boxes under a worn-out lake blanket was a small, gift-wrapped box. Blue paper, neatly taped with a silver ribbon. I almost smiled at first. Maybe it was a surprise for me. Chloe loved giving gifts for no reason. It could have been a new lure or one of those silly novelty shirts she always found. But then I noticed the tag. Tawar. I stared at it for a long time. The air wasn't even subtle. Only one person came to mind. Rick. I sat there on the floor of the shed, feeling the chill of the early spring air creep under my collar. Carefully, I unwrapped the box. Inside was a leather keychain with the shape of a walleye engraved on it, along with the words to more perfect catches. Love Sea. It was like the floor beneath me shifted. I felt the air leave my lungs for a second. Chloe didn't sign notes with just C. That was something she used only in private. Pet names, little notes she'd left me years ago during our dating days. Now, it was attached to a gift meant for Rick. I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I didn't even march into town. I just stared at it, letting the quiet realization set in. Chloe wasn't just helping Rick prepare for the derby. She was preparing something else entirely. And she was careful. Too careful. She hid this deep, assuming I'd never even look through the shed until summer. Instead of confronting her, I repacked the box, wrapping it exactly as I'd found it, every fold of the ribbon perfect. Then I made a small adjustment. I took the leather keychain and carefully sliced the stitching inside with my pocket knife. Just enough so it would fall apart with use. Nothing visible, just enough to ruin the gift when it mattered. I sealed the box back up, slid it right into its hiding place, and walked out of that shed like nothing had happened. When Chloe came home, carrying bags of supplies and chattering about the weather, I played along. I even offered to help unpack, smiling as if everything was perfectly normal. She leaned against me while cooking dinner that night, laughing like the girl I married, like there wasn't a growing storm hanging over her head. You seem quiet, she said softly. Just tired, I replied. Trip wore me out more than I thought. She kissed my cheek. Get some rest, love. The derby will cheer you up. The derby. That stupid derby. The same event that had always been the highlight of our year. Where Rick and I would compete like kids again, joking, fishing, making Chloe roll her eyes when we took it too seriously. Now, I couldn't even picture it without the taste of betrayal souring the water. The next few days, I noticed more. Her phone never left her side. She took it to the bathroom, kept it face down at dinner, even plugged it in under her pillow at night. Her texts were quick, short replies, fingers darting across the screen like someone hiding a hand of bad cards. I didn't need to see the messages. I already knew who she was talking to. But instead of confronting her, I played dumb. I asked about the derby preparations, about Abby and Vanessa, about Rick even, just to see if she'd slip. She didn't. She had rehearsed this well. I think this year's going to be the best derby yet, she said one night, eyes shining like she meant it. I smiled back, feeling nothing. That night, I sat on the back deck, staring out at the frozen edges of the lake thawing under the weak spring sun. I thought about the early days when Chloe used to drag me onto the dock just to sit and watch the sunrise. How she used to write me little notes on napkins. How we'd laugh until our sides hurt. Now, she was doing the same for someone else. And worse, with someone I trusted. But I wasn't going to blow up yet. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of catching me off guard. No, I'd wait. Because soon, the cracks in her story would grow too wide to hide. And when they did, I'd be ready. The next week, I could barely look at Chloe without feeling like I was watching a stranger pretending to be my wife. She was flawless. Too flawless. Every word, every gesture felt like someone performing a role, and the more she leaned into it, the more I knew she wasn't going to give you the truth willingly. Yet, I wasn't sure where to point my anger. I had suspicions, but no face, no clear evidence of who exactly she was sneaking around with. I started watching more closely. I began noticing how she mentioned Rick less and less, almost like she was deliberately avoiding his name. But then, oddly, she started mentioning another name more, Kyle. Kyle was a new guy from the boat repair shop, someone I barely knew beyond the occasional hello at the marina. Chloe casually dropped his name a few times, saying he'd been helping her with some things for the Derby. It seemed harmless, but there was a twitch in her voice when she brought him up. Almost rehearsed. I couldn't help it. My focus shifted. Maybe Kyle was the one. He was younger, single, and always lingering around the dock when Chloe helped with Derby setup. The more I paid attention, the more I noticed them talking, smiling, occasionally walking off to the side while everyone else busied themselves. I decided to follow my gut. One afternoon, when Chloe told me she was going to help Vanessa with the seating arrangements for the Derby's dinner, I didn't stay home like I pretended to. Instead, I drove into town and parked across from the boat repair shop, waiting. Sure enough, not 20 minutes later, Chloe pulled up in her car. I watched as she went inside, and Kyle appeared from the back lot, wiping his hands on a rag. They talked for a good while. Kyle seemed nervous, Chloe animated. I gripped the steering wheel jaw tight. My stomach turned watching them. Later that night, I confronted her. "So, how was Vanessa today?" I asked, keeping my tone casual. Chloe blinked. "Oh, good. We sorted out most of the tables." "Really?" I leaned back. "Because I stopped by the marina this afternoon. Thought I'd surprise you too." Her face drained of color, lips parting. You did, and saw you with Kyle instead." I let the words hang heavy. Her eyes darted away, searching for a lie. "Adam, it's not what you think." "Then what is it?" She hesitated, wringing her hands. "He's helping me with your Derby surprise. I wanted it to be special. I didn't want you to know yet." I narrowed my eyes. "A surprise?" She nodded quickly, almost too quickly. "I know you wanted to fix up the old pontoon. Kyle's been helping me secretly. I was going to reveal it at the Derby." The story seemed ridiculous, but then Chloe had always loved planning big reveals. And Kyle did run the boat shop. Was it possible I was about to ruin my own anniversary surprise out of paranoia? "You could have told me," I said quietly. Tears welled in her eyes. "I want to make you proud." "Please, Adam, it's nothing else." "I swear." I stared at her, searching for cracks, but all I found was someone who looked like she genuinely thought she'd been caught spoiling a surprise. I stepped back, unsure. The tension broke just enough for her to lunge forward and hug me tightly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to worry you." And for a moment, I almost believed her. Almost. But that night, as I lay awake, I couldn't ignore the fact that the wine, the jacket, the hidden gift, none of that matched up with Kyle. He wasn't close enough to Chloe to earn pet names or secret gifts. And more importantly, Chloe was careful, but she wasn't subtle enough to pull a multi-week boat restoration without leaving real clues. Something still didn't add up. It wasn't Kyle. But whoever it was, Chloe was working hard to keep me guessing. I realized then that maybe she wanted me to suspect someone like Kyle, someone harmless enough to distract me while the real story unfolded behind my back. I wasn't about to make the mistake of trusting tears and half-truths again. I knew better now, and if Chloe thought I was backing down, she was about to be very, very disappointed. The following week, I went through the motions, pretending that Chloe's explanation about Kyle had settled everything. I even complimented her for being so thoughtful, kissed her cheek at breakfast, and played the part of the grateful husband. But inside, I knew better. The puzzle still had missing pieces, and I could feel them clicking together slowly with every passing day. Chloe was different. Not nervous exactly. More like relieved, as if my confrontation about Kyle had bought her more time. She started smiling more, humming while cooking, and making small talk about the Derby like nothing had ever happened. But behind all that charm, I noticed small tells. When I mentioned Rick casually one evening, she froze mid-step in the kitchen. Just for a second, but it was enough. "Have you heard from Rick about the Derby?" I asked, watching her closely. "Oh yeah," she said, regaining composure. "He's busy, but he'll be ready." Busy. Rick was always busy, but he'd never missed a planning session this close to the event before. Something about the way she sidestepped the question told me everything I needed to know. I decided it was time to follow the lead that I had been ignoring. Rick wasn't just busy. He was distant. Too distant. I checked in my old texts. Sure enough, Rick hadn't messaged me in weeks. Odd, considering we were usually glued together this time of year, prepping the boats, swapping Derby jokes, sharing bait strategies. Yet now, silence. Not even a courtesy, "You back from Chicago yet?" That wasn't like him. That night, while Chloe showered, I slipped outside and into the shed. I couldn't resist checking on the hidden gift again. I wanted to see if it had moved. Sure enough, it was gone. The small indentation where the box had been was empty. I stepped back into the house, quietly, heart thudding. She'd retrieved it without a word. No mention of the pontoon surprise. No further talk of Kyle. Just silently removing it like it never existed. The next day, I took a long detour after work and drove by Rick's lake house. His old truck was parked out front, but the place looked dead. No fishing poles on the dock, no lights, not even smoke from the chimney. I tried calling him. Straight to voicemail. Not even a text back. Chloe didn't bring up Rick at all that evening. She didn't have to. Her silence screamed louder than any excuse. Still, I said nothing. Instead, I spent the week watching. She grew more affectionate, noticeably so. Suddenly, she was baking my favorite pie, suggesting we go out for dinner after the Derby, and reminiscing about our early years together. She even mentioned inviting Vanessa and some old friends to stay at the lake house for the Derby weekend, something she hadn't suggested in years. Most husbands might have seen this as a woman trying to mend things. I saw it for what it was. Guilt, or fear, or both. And it made me realize she wasn't slipping up by accident. She was playing for time. On Thursday night, I got my first undeniable hint. Chloe was out running errands, and I decided to check the garage. Tucked behind an old tackle box was her lake bag, the one she only used during Derby season. Out of habit, I unzipped it. Inside was a receipt from Carlson's Outfitters dated 2 days earlier. She had purchased new thermals, a pair of insulated gloves, and, oddly, a set of high-end boat cushions. Not for our boat. We just had ours redone last fall. I flipped the receipt over. On the back, scribbled faintly in pencil, was a note. Leave after 10. Bring wine. There was no signature, no indication of who it was for. But I knew. The next morning, Chloe was all smiles as she prepped for the big weekend. Vanessa is excited, she said over coffee. I think this year will be special. I agreed. It will be, I said, staring into my cup. That night, I drove out to Rick's lake house after dark. His truck was gone. No lights. No sign of life. But the boat, the small skiff we use for shallow runs, was freshly tied to the dock, bobbing gently. And next to it, half tucked under a bench seat, was the unmistakable blue gift box. I didn't open it this time. I didn't need to. I knew exactly who it was for. Chloe wasn't tangled up with Kyle. He was just a decoy. The real trail led back to the oldest part of my life, the friend I trusted more than anyone, the one person who'd never miss a Derby unless he had something else to gain. I stared at that gift box for a long time, listening to the soft slap of the water against the dock. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just felt the icy clarity of knowing exactly who, and soon, exactly how I would end this. I woke the next morning feeling like I'd crossed a threshold. No more second-guessing. No more giving Chloe the benefit of the doubt. I knew. The only thing missing now was the when and where, and that was a puzzle I was going to finish whether she liked it or not. Chloe, on the other hand, acted like the perfect wife. She was cheerful, fluttering around the kitchen talking about guest lists, fishing schedules, and how Vanessa would probably bring that awful bean salad again. She kissed me. She held my hand. She laughed like a woman without a care. But now I saw it for what it was masking. Every word carefully chosen, every gesture meant to lull me into comfort. But behind it all, I saw the cracks. The nervous glances when I asked about Derby logistics. The way she avoided talking about Rick outright, instead weaving stories about Kyle and Vanessa, as if to keep me busy guessing in the wrong direction. I bided my time. I worked longer hours, or so she thought, but really I was spending those evenings driving past Rick's lake house, watching the lights, noting patterns. The truck was there some nights, gone others. Chloe's car started showing up too. Always late, always staying for just a few hours. They never stayed overnight. Too careful for that, but the pattern was undeniable. I started making excuses to get out of the house more. I told Chloe I was working overtime to help cover extra Derby expenses. She believed me easily. Or maybe she just wanted to believe it, too focused on whatever fantasy she and Rick were playing out behind the old wooden walls of that lake house. It wasn't until the following Thursday, just 2 days before Derby weekend, that I got exactly what I needed. Chloe told me she was heading into town to help Vanessa with last-minute decorations. She kissed me goodbye and rushed out the door like someone who had somewhere far more important to be. I followed, slowly, carefully. I stayed well behind as she took the back route around the lake, winding through familiar roads, before pulling into Rick's property, parking behind the trees where she probably assumed no one would spot her car from the road. I parked half a mile out and approached on foot, sticking to the tree line like we used to when Rick and I hunted together as kids. I knew every route, every dip in the ground, every bend in the path. I stayed low, moving quietly until I had a clear view of the boathouse. And there they were. The boathouse door was cracked open, lamplight spilling out across the dock. Inside, I could see them through the gap. Chloe and Rick talking in hushed tones, close enough that the space between them barely existed. Rick held the gift box, the one I had found weeks ago. Chloe reached up, adjusted the collar of his jacket like she'd done it 100 times. My throat went dry. I could have stormed in. I could have made a scene right there. But instead, I stepped back into the shadows. I watched. I made sure to memorize every word I could make out. "We'll have to be careful this weekend," Chloe said softly. "Adam's been suspicious." Rick chuckled. "He won't catch on." "He almost did," she whispered. "But I threw him off with the Kyle story." Rick smirked. "Smart girl." I clenched my fists, feeling the blood drain from my face. So that was it. The Kyle angle wasn't just a convenient lie. It was deliberate. She knew I was circling, so she fed me just enough to make me doubt myself. I could barely stand the sight of it. The way they moved like they were in some secret world. The same boathouse where Rick and I used to patch up rods and fillet our catches after long days on the lake, now tainted. I didn't stay much longer. I didn't need to. I had seen enough. I made my way back to the truck in silence, keeping my breathing steady, letting the anger pool deep instead of boiling over. I didn't drive home immediately. I stopped at the old boat launch on the far side of the lake and sat there until the sun started to rise. I thought about all the years Rick and I spent together. The late-night beers on the dock. The childhood fishing trips. The time he stood by me at my wedding. Then I thought about Chloe and how easily she'd throw me away. By the time I returned home, Chloe was already there, acting as if she'd just returned from Vanessa's. She kissed me good morning, made me coffee, talked about how excited everyone was for Derby weekend. I played along, because now it wasn't about finding out. It was about making sure they both regretted every second they thought they got away with it. The morning of the Derby arrived with clear skies and a lake so calm it looked like glass. Chloe moved around the house like it was Christmas morning, humming and smiling as she prepped food and decorations, blissfully unaware that her little world was about to collapse. I watched her from the kitchen, drinking my coffee in silence, timing every movement like a man with nothing left to lose. Vanessa and a few others would be arriving by noon, and Chloe was busy trying to play the role of the perfect host. Little did she know I wasn't going to ruin her day with a confrontation. I was going to ruin her weekend with the truth, quietly, completely, without a single raised voice. When Vanessa showed up, Chloe welcomed her like always. They laughed, shared inside jokes, and swapped updates. I noticed how Chloe clung to Vanessa like nothing was wrong, oblivious to how many loose threads were about to unravel. Rick arrived not long after, pretending everything was normal. He shook my hand, smiled, and even asked about the fishing conditions like we were still brothers in arms. I shook his hand too, firmly. I smiled. I asked about his boat maintenance. He laughed and joked, never suspecting I already knew he was preparing more than just tackle this season. I played along through the morning. Drinks flowed, friends gathered on the dock, old Derby stories resurfaced. Chloe stuck close to me in front of others, flashing that picture-perfect wife act, but every time I caught her glance drifting toward Rick across the bonfire pit, I felt my patience harden. Vanessa noticed too. She caught me during a quiet moment, pulling me aside near the woodpile. "Adam," she whispered. "You okay? Something's off." I nodded. "Yeah, just tired." She didn't buy it, but she trusted me enough not to push further. That evening, as the sun dipped low and the bonfire crackled to life, Chloe and Rick exchanged subtle glances I knew too well now. They thought they were being discreet, But the entire stage was set exactly how I needed. As friends laughed and warmed themselves by the fire, I slipped away into the shadows, signaling subtly to Vanessa. I circled through the trees, past the back deck, and down to the old hot tub nestled behind the cabin, a spot most of our guests didn't even realize was there thanks to the way the trees curved around it. Rick and Chloe would. They'd used it plenty of times when Rick and I would fish late into the night, and Chloe would go to bed early. I positioned myself near the clearing, hidden but close enough to hear. Sure enough, within minutes, Rick followed Chloe quietly away from the group, both of them grinning like children sneaking cookies after bedtime. They didn't even hesitate. Chloe stripped off her cardigan, Rick shrugged off his jacket, and they slipped into the hot tub together like it was their little secret hideaway. They sat close, talking low, giggling, toasting with hidden flasks they must have tucked away earlier. Watching them made me realize they weren't just reckless, they were arrogant. They thought I'd bought the Kyle story. They thought they had one. But I wasn't here to make a scene. I was here to finish it. I returned quietly to the bonfire and caught Vanessa's eye. She raised an eyebrow. I nodded once. Without a word, Vanessa whispered to a few of our closest friends, subtly steering the entire group toward the clearing. Laughter and chatter masked our approach until one by one, everyone stood at the edge of the woods, looking down at the glowing hot tub. It took them a moment to realize they were being watched. Chloe spotted us first, eyes wide, mouth hanging open. Rick noticed half a beat later, nearly dropping his flask as he scrambled to the edge of the tub. The clearing went dead silent. I stepped forward, hands in my pockets, locking eyes with Chloe. "Thought I'd warm up too," I said calmly. Gasps broke out. Vanessa's jaw tightened. Others just stared in disbelief. Chloe's face contorted into something between horror and shame. Rick sank into the water, probably wishing it could swallow him whole. Chloe stammered, "Adam, please, it's not, don't." I cut her off flatly. I turned to Vanessa, who stood frozen beside me. "You were right," I said. Something was off. Then, without another word, I turned back toward the bonfire, leaving them to stew in the heat of their own mess. I didn't shout. I didn't need to. The entire town saw it, and Chloe knew there was no coming back. The bonfire crackled steadily as I returned to the group, leaving Chloe and Rick stranded and exposed in the glow of string lights and stunned silence. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I could already hear Chloe scrambling through excuses, Rick mumbling something about a misunderstanding, and the shocked murmurs rippling through the crowd. But I wasn't interested in their chaos. I was focused on the next step. As Vanessa and a few others fell in beside me, stunned but supportive, I calmly grabbed another log and fed it to the fire, like I hadn't just watched my wife and best friend destroy everything we had built. Nobody spoke at first. They just stared, unsure whether to follow me or to run from the unfolding drama. I gave them no reason to panic. No yelling, no broken glass, no thrown punches. Just steady silence. Eventually, someone whispered, "Adam, you okay?" I nodded. "I'm great." By the time Chloe and Rick returned, dripping and wide-eyed, the party had gone quiet. They tried to blend back in like nothing happened. Chloe clung to her cardigan, eyes darting from face to face as if searching for an ally. Rick stayed behind her, awkward and small, trying to hide behind the very crowd he used to lead during our derby weekends. I didn't give them the pleasure of a confrontation. Not yet. Instead, I handed Vanessa a folded manila envelope, the same one I had prepared days ago when I knew this was inevitable. She opened it cautiously. Inside were the divorce papers, signed, dated, and fully prepared. Vanessa's eyes flickered to mine. "You sure?" I nodded. "Absolutely." Vanessa stepped forward before Chloe could even open her mouth to beg for attention. Without a word, she handed Chloe the envelope. Chloe fumbled with it, opened it, and went pale. I could see it hit her like a brick wall. The whispers around the bonfire turned into gasps. "No," Chloe said under her breath, looking directly at me. "Adam, please, we can what?" I interrupted. "Start over? Pretend you weren't sneaking around behind my back with him for God knows how long? Pretend you didn't drag Vanessa and everyone else into your lies?" "I don't think so." Tears filled her eyes, but I felt nothing. No pity, no words. Just emptiness where trust used to be. She reached toward me, stepping barefoot across the dirt. Adam, please, I love you. I backed up, shaking my head. You love the chase. You loved yourself. I was just the background to your little story. Rick shifted uncomfortably, unable to even meet my eyes. Chloe turned to him, as if seeking refuge. But he stepped away like a coward, too ashamed to even stand beside her now that the spotlight had burned through the shadows. I turned to the crowd, who stood frozen in disbelief. Sorry for the show, I said. Derby's still on tomorrow. No need to let their mess ruin it. The tension broke just enough for a few nervous chuckles. Vanessa stepped beside me, her jaw set tight. Chloe stared at her. Vanessa, she whispered, please say something. Vanessa didn't blink. I've got nothing left to say to you. That was it. Chloe fell to her knees, trembling, sobbing in front of the entire lakeside community. No one moved to help her, not even Rick. I turned my back, walking away without looking over my shoulder. For the first time in weeks, I felt free. Not happy, but free. The moment I reached the cabin, I could hear the bonfire laughter slowly resuming, distant and faint. Life was moving on without her, and so was I. The morning after the bonfire was quieter than I expected. The lake, usually buzzing with early derby preparation, felt hushed. Friends went about their business without speaking of what they'd witnessed. No one needed to. Chloe had humiliated herself without any help from me. I woke early, brewed coffee, and stood by the window watching the mist roll off the water. Chloe was nowhere to be seen, not in the kitchen, not by the docks where she usually fussed over derby decorations. I found her eventually, sitting on the porch steps, knees pulled to her chest, staring at nothing. I stepped outside and leaned against the railing, coffee in hand. She didn't notice me at first, lost in whatever scramble of guilt and panic was consuming her. When she finally turned, her eyes were red and puffy. Adam, she whispered, can we please talk? I stayed silent, letting the sound of the birds fill the void. I know I messed up, she said, standing slowly. But I just need you to know I love you. I panicked. I was lonely, and Rick was just convenient. I interrupted, my voice even. She winced. No, it wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I sipped my coffee. You made your choice. She stepped closer, reaching for me, but I sidestepped calmly, leaving her hand hanging in the air. Adam, please. Don't do this. Don't just throw us away. I let out a dry laugh. You already did. Tears streamed down her face. I'll fix it. I'll cut him off. I'll tell everyone it was my fault, whatever you want. Just please don't leave me. She moved toward me again, more desperate this time, but I backed further away. You think this is about embarrassment? About damage control? No, Chloe. This is about watching you reveal exactly who you are and realizing I don't want anything to do with it. She sank to the porch step, sobbing into her hands. I stared at her, feeling nothing but cold resolve. She wasn't sorry. She was desperate. Desperate not to lose the security, the image, the comfort she'd had with me. There was no regret, only self-preservation. Do you even love me? She choked out. I tilted my head. I did. I loved you when you were real. Before the lies, before the sneaking around, before you decided a fling with my best friend was worth more than our life together. Her face crumpled, and for a brief second, I almost pitied her. Almost. But I didn't. I'm not coming back from this, I said. You'll sign the papers. She shot up. You can't be serious. Adam, I'm more serious than I've ever been. She lunged forward, grabbing my arm. We can fix this. You and me, we've survived worse. Please. I peeled her hand off calmly. We haven't survived anything. I carried it alone. And I'm done. Chloe collapsed again, sobbing uncontrollably, but I turned and walked back inside without another word. I left her there on the porch, broken and small. I didn't feel satisfaction. Not yet. Just clarity. It was over. Later that afternoon, as friends prepared for the Derby kickoff, Chloe tried again. She cornered me behind the cabin, eyes swollen, voice trembling. If you do this, she said, you'll destroy me. Esther de Her. No, you did that yourself. With that, I walked past her, rejoined the others, and never looked back. She didn't follow. For once, Chloe stayed exactly where she belonged, left behind. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.